Hi, I'm Kovac, and I would like to talk to you about mouse acceleration in first-person shooters. There is quite a stigma about mouse acceleration in these games, and there's a pretty good reason for it, to be honest. Most of what people have seen is Microsoft's enhanced pointer precision, which is pretty bad, and Logitech's mouse accel. Pretty much every mouse driver implementation of acceleration that I've seen is just plain bad. For example, Microsoft's enhanced pointer precision is basically you have your sensitivity, you're moving at a certain speed, and then if you move fast enough, suddenly the sensitivity doubles. In a first-person shooter, say you're trying to track somebody at a range like this, you get close enough and then you keep trying to track, suddenly you're flying off to the side. You really don't want to use that. It will absolutely screw you up. And then Logitech's mouse acceleration is a little bit different because it doesn't do it suddenly, but on the other hand, it has no cap. So if you move your mouse remotely fast, you just spin all around and you lose complete control. So whenever people tell you mouse acceleration is bad, they're talking about that sort of stuff, and I agree completely. You should never use it in a first-person shooter. That said, mouse acceleration itself is not inherently evil. It is not bad, and in fact, there is a good form of mouse acceleration that was kind of introduced in Quake Live because they had a lot of console commands that let you really tweak it, but unfortunately, since it's only in Quake Live, that means nobody else is going to use it. The top Quake Live players, if you look at the top dozen, literally 10 out of 12 will use mouse acceleration. And there's a good reason for that. It's because it is actually good. It can help their play. Even at the highest level, there's something to be gained by it. So, I guess, basically, whenever you look at other players at the top level, like Counter-Strike and any first-person shooter, you'll see people with really low mouse sensitivities. They have these huge mouse pads, like, for example, this one I'm using is about 17.5 inches wide, and people with these mouse pads take 20, maybe even 30 inches of mouse pad to do a full 360. That gives them amazing accuracy at long range, and in close range, if they're really moving their hands around like this, they can go with also incredible accuracy. But they do lose quite a bit of their ability to react to close range fights, and if somebody sneaks up on them, they have to move pretty far to react to it, and then reset their hand, and it is a little bit of a burden. They can work around it with situational awareness, but still, there's something to be gained here. So, I'd argue that most of the top players who use those really low mouse sensitivities, they get their enhanced accuracy from moving the mouse at moderate speeds. They're not moving it too slow, just inching it like this. They're not flying across the mouse pad like this. But on the other hand, they're moving it, at this sort of pace if you look at my hand down there. So whenever they do move it really fast, flicking to the sides like that, they're just trying to compensate for the fact that they have really low mouse sensitivities. So, Povo Hat, an Australian Team Fortress 2 player and an old Quake World player who I knew, made this driver that is based on the Quake Live commands. Now, what it does is it gives you complete control over the mouse sensitivity based on how fast you're moving the mouse. And I wrote this little program to actually display what the curve looks like. So what I've done here is I went back to the default settings because my guide here, my goal in this guide is to teach people how to actually set up mouse acceleration much like I have it. So, that said, one of the huge benefits of this mouse driver is that since you can completely control the mouse sensitivity, then you can make it so that your flicks go to a certain distance, and then you can keep it that way, and then you can completely change how your low sensitivity works. And if you do that, then what you're going to be able to do is, say you realize your sensitivity is not low enough, or it's too low for long-range tracking, so you can tweak that, and then you completely maintain your muscle memory for high-speed flicks. it really works out incredibly well in practice. So people who say that mouse accel is horrible for muscle memory, this is the exact opposite. You can continue to tweak your sensitivity and you maintain the muscle memory. That is impossible with anything else. So, up front, I would like to say the biggest downside of this driver is that you have to uninstall whatever driver comes with your mouse. So whenever I say that, I mean if you have any macro keys or macro buttons on your mouse, anything that changes like the color of it, that software is gone. Can't have it running, it won't work. But with that out of the way, downloading the driver is not too bad. You just go to this website, which I will provide in the link. You can download it, follow the instructions here, and this YouTube video actually is very good at telling you exactly what to do. You just skip to the parts that are relevant to you. He has a couple different sections for if you're in 64-bit versus 32-bit, and you also have to download DSEO, which basically takes an unsigned driver and signs it so that your system trusts it. So this is unlike other driver installations because you need to jump through a couple of hoops, since PovoHat didn't want to pay the extra like $500 a year to Microsoft to make this a signed driver, but it's worth it in my opinion. And also I will provide a link to the mouse acceleration driver configuration utility that I wrote here. And I would like to give you a heads up whenever you run this, it does ask you for administrator privileges. The reason for that is because it writes to your registry. Your registry is where these mouse acceleration settings are held that the driver actually reads in. And I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Alright, so once you download the driver and configure it, I'm not going to show you those steps, you can do that on your own. What's going on here is the blue curve is what I currently have these settings set to. And this little curve you see down here is what my normal sensitivity is set to. You can save different profiles, you can have it so it displays different things in different colors, and you can also make it so that these profiles open up whenever you run a certain program or press a certain hotkey. And hopefully people find a use for that. I personally don't use the hotkeys, but that's fine. So what this graph shows you is along the x-axis here is how fast you're moving the mouse, and along here is the effective sensitivity. So whenever you see this flat line, this is a flat sensitivity with no mouse acceleration. Whenever you see this, this is what I use. It is a flat line for a short period of time, so this is very low sensitivity. Then it slowly ramps up in a predictable manner so that I can get used to it. And then at this point, it's about as fast as I'd be moving my hand, and then it flattens off. So if I really flick my mouse quickly, it's always going to be this sensitivity, and it's what I'm used to. Alright, so you see these numbers up here, 1000 Hertz and 2300 DPI. 1000 Hertz, you can go to settings, set the USB rate, 125, 250, 500, 1000, and you have to do this manually. The program does not detect what your mouse actually runs at, and it does impact what the curve looks like, because it does come into play whenever the driver is calculating the sensitivity settings. And then the DPI is purely for reference. This is just so that if you take a screenshot of this, then somebody can see what your general settings are. Now, as for DPI, I would like to mention right now, high DPI is actually good for this. I'll be able to explain it a little bit better later, but just for now, keep in mind if you're going to do this, set your DPI as high as it goes, but make sure your mouse doesn't do anything weird like skipping whenever you're moving it or tracking, and that doesn't have tracking issues if you move it too quickly. So, high DPI is good. Alright. So, my general use of this mouse driver is that I have effectively a low sense tracking, but I can also wrist flick a 180. So I can go like that and turn around really quickly. And again, I don't actually have it configured right now. This is a flat sensitivity, it's really high. I don't like this. So piece by piece, I'm going to show you how I arrive to the settings that I do. So what I get out of this is mostly wrist aiming, because I use my wrist to track, and I also use my wrist to flick. And I'm able to do everything as accurately as people who have really low sensitivities. That said, people who already use low sensitivities have something to gain by this, because they can very easily take what they previously had and then make it so if they move their mouse really quickly, they gain a little bit more speed and make it easier for them to do a 360 or 180. So, although I could show you the settings that I have to make this curve right here, if you put them into your own settings, it would not feel the same at all. The reason for that is because a lot of this comes down to the mouse-specific stuff, like the DPI, the refresh rate, how fast I move my hand, the mouse feet, the mouse pad friction. So if I change any of that, then I'm going to redo this. And the way I do it is first I find, actually let me show you what sensitivity cap does. So I'm going to set it to 1 and click Save Changes. Always start to make sure that this is currently 1 before you do this, and then you go into Settings, Scale Sense Cap with Post Scale. Have that checked. It's very handy. So what I do now, say I drop the post scale to 0.5, so it's going to have the sensitivity, and then at the same time the cap is going to be increased to 2. It jumped from 1 to 2 whenever I changed that. And the reason for that is that sensitivity cap is relative to your post scale. So this is saying that if you're at half sensitivity, then the highest the sense will ever go is double that. If you go to 0.25, it'll go to 4 times that. So if you do that and then you save it, you're not going to see much. It's just flat down here. And now, say I set the acceleration to 0.02, something really small. There you go. You see it goes up slowly and then caps off at this, which was 1. So I do this and then I change that to 0.25, and if you go out further you'll see that it also caps off at 1. But I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to keep it at that. So now that I've set the acceleration down to here, what I've got is low sense for tracking like this, and flick sense for and high sense for flicking. It's handy. I definitely like that. But there's a lot of work to be done still. So first you want to find what an actual good high-end mouse sensitivity is for a 180-degree flick. So what you want to do is set the acceleration to something absurdly high, 100, and then you go in Game and start tweaking this sensitivity cap down. I'm going to say 1.5, see what happens. Looks like that. Alright. Still a little high for my tastes. I like to be able to do a 180 with something along these lines. So maybe 1.45. That's better. I like that. Actually, I can probably go lower. 1.4. That's nice. Okay. So I can do quick flicks to go like that. I like that. So now's a good time to save the profile. I'm just going to call it test.profile. And from there, if you screw anything up, you can click open test.profile and it'll bring you back to it. Wait, didn't I set this to 0.02? Maybe I didn't. Okay. Well, whatever the case. Now I've got that. So, next step, you need to figure out exactly how fast your mouse can be moved before you start to lose, before anything beyond here doesn't mean anything. So physically, I can move my mouse like this, but the question is the sensor actually picking up all of that, and how fast is it? So, if I set the post scale to 0.01, really small, you see the sense cap jumped way up, and then I set the acceleration way up, and again it immediately jumps up there. But then I use the offset. Set the offset to like 10. See, it goes from 0 to 20, and then at 10 it jumps all the way up. So you have this Oh, let me save that. So, I go in game, have really low sensitivity. This movement is not doing anything. And this is for testing purposes only. You would never play with anything like this, so don't try. And then I move my mouse quickly. Tracks as I would expect. Next, I'm going to be using the keyboard to navigate here. So if you keep hitting tab, it goes like this. If you hold shift and hit tab, it goes backwards. Always remember that. That's incredibly useful in any program, not just this. Anyway, so I'm going to increase the offset from 10 to 20. Save it, and then go in game, try to turn. Yeah, I have no problem doing the 180. Okay, I can move my mouse pretty quickly. 20 is no problem. 30. Go in game. Alright, still not having a problem doing my flicks. Change it to 40. Yep, no problem. Pretty consistent, getting pretty good accuracy. My flicks are working no problem. 60. Alright, now I go here. Sometimes I can get it, but that's a little too high. So, my mouse flicks, 60 is too high. Let's try 50. Oops. Alright. That's pretty good. It's close. It's also really hard to deal with. Like I said, never play with this. Just use this for testing to see if it's something that feels good for you. Alright, so 50 is about where I want the mouse sensitivity to cap out. Keep this in mind. Very important number for me, and whatever you end up with, remember that as well. So I hit tab, go over to open, hit spacebar, keep hitting tab until eventually it shows up here, down arrows, and hit enter to get to the test profile. Loads it again, I'm back to this. And I also, yeah, anyway. Alright, so that's what it should have been. I just saved it at the wrong state. So, you see this mouse sensitivity goes from 0, or goes from the low sense to the high sense by the time it's at 20. I want it to be at that by 50. So I drop this down. See what it looks like. That's 80, that's a little bit too slow. So, raise it up. That's actually really good. Alright, so if I were to go in game, whenever I do the flick, I should be able to do 180. So the next step is, how can I actually set up my post scale? So what I want is a really low mouse sensitivity. And again, now that you've got to this point, it's a good time to hit save. So I hit save. And then, so say I want a really low mouse sensitivity, and I actually, at the low end, use about 20 inches to a 360. I happen to know, for me, it's about 0.02. So I'm going to save that. Well, actually, I'm also going to add an offset. So I'll put an offset of 50. I will save it, and what you'll see is it's a flat, low sensitivity for as fast as I can physically move my mouse. So this is the same as just plain 20 inches to a 360 at this point. But what I'd tell you to do is get a ruler out, move your mouse from starting at one edge of the pad while you're looking at a reference point on the map, turn as accurately as you can, so that's about 180 degrees. Get the ruler out, measure how far you move the mouse, take a look at it. That is about 20 inches. So, well, rather, that is 10 inches, but since I did a 180, it's 20 inches to a 360. So, it would take a little bit of trial and error for you to figure out what works well for you, but start with something incredibly low that you could never imagine yourself using unless you already use a really low mouse sensitivity. So, let's imagine that I just went through that process and found 0.02 is just about, or 0.2 is just about that sensitivity. Next step is the offset. This is something that is completely up for debate. Personally, I like to look at about a fifth of my maximum hand speed to maybe a sixth of it. So since my maximum offset is 50, if I was going to look at it, I'd say maybe 10. So I set it to 10. Now what I've got is a flat low sensitivity to start for the first, fifth of as fast as I can move the mouse, and then it starts ramping up. But again, this isn't going up high enough. So I want to raise this to, let's see, that caps out at 60, so just a little bit higher. 5.5 maybe. There we go. So there we are. We have a very low mouse sensitivity, then it goes up steadily, something you can predict unlike the Microsoft mouse acceleration. And then it hits a cap that's convenient for flicking. At my highest speed I can move the mouse, then it stays flat because it doesn't really matter past that point. It's just really nice to be able to have this specific point, because if later you decide, I don't like 20 inches to a 360, I'd rather have like 30, you can go to, let's see, something like that. And then you see it meets up here higher, so you need to raise the acceleration again. Let's go to like 8. It's closer. There. So I do that, and I guess I haven't actually shown you that I can still do my flick in here, and I have my tracking that works very well at ranges. So anyway, if I wanted to drop that to 30 inches to 360, I can do that and then save it. And then suddenly I've got even lower sensitivity for this. Now, something to keep in mind here is it is by far easiest to get used to mouse acceleration whenever you've got it, so that it is a very, very gradual incline. So a steep incline like the Microsoft thing does not work well for first-person shooters. I personally prefer it to be as gradual as possible. What did I say? 5.5 was good for that? Yeah, 5.8, that's what it was. Alright, so save that, save it as a test profile, and now I can do this. And I can still track. So again, the offset is key here. If you lower the offset, what you gain is a smoother curve that makes it easier for you to get used to it. If you raise the offset, what you gain is more steady low mouse sensitivity. The longer that your mouse sensitivity is flat, the better you are at tracking. So it's kind of a trade-off. Ideally, I think somewhere around, like I said, a fifth to a sixth of as fast as you move the mouse is ideal, but that's really up for debate. A lot of people might go for less of an offset, or some people might say, no, I really like having a low sensitivity for quite a long time, so I raise that up. Alright, so that's basically what I do for this sort of thing. As you can see, this is my actual mouse sensitivity, and I don't have flicks as fast as this for whenever I'm in game. It's actually more like, I have to move the mouse a good bit further, but I still gain the great precision at range, and I can track people up close. It's quite an upgrade in my opinion. And also, I would like to mention that that DPI thing. So I told you high DPI is good for this. Now if you think about it, what this mouse driver is doing is it's mapping how fast you move the mouse to a sensitivity. So if I had 400 DPI, then my entire movement of how fast I could possibly move the mouse would go from 0 to 10. Think about how it would have to map that. It would be like 1 point here, 1 point here, 1 point here, suddenly it points up here, suddenly it points up here, suddenly it points up here. That would make it so that basically it's much harder to predict. So a high DPI gives you a smoother curve. since every single, there are 20 points from here to here that it maps between how fast I move the mouse and how fast the effective sensitivity is, you're getting a lot more smooth adjustment in the curve. So high DPI is good. Some other things, options in here that I didn't talk about. Sensitivity, this is a weird one. If you look at how the math of this is done, and the driver is open source, you can view the source code to it, and that's how I figured out how these curves are. The sensitivity is just factored in a strange way. I don't like to play with it. I just leave it at 1. The power. Power is an interesting one. Some people like to go for a higher power. So if you go to 2.5, what you see is the curve, rather than immediately going to a straight line, kind of goes up a little bit and then speeds up until it's the sensitivity cap. Obviously, if you change to 2.5, you would probably want to drop the acceleration down because this is hitting too early. So you go like 0.5, no, maybe 4.5. It's getting pretty close. You get the idea. And this would give you the feel of low sensitivity for a little bit longer, and then somewhere in here it would be ramping up a little bit faster to compensate for it. So that's an interesting way to gain the low sensitivity feel, but I prefer to use the offset instead. Alternately, you can also go for, let me make sure this is alright. Alright, you can also go for a sub 2 power, so like 1.8. And you'll see it jumps up earlier and then smooths out after. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but just so you're aware, that's what it does. I prefer power of 2. So I think that's pretty much it in how I configure this. My general recommendation is, once you have something you like, save it, and then if you ever want to change it, save as a different file name. So you'll see I have loadout.profile, loadout2.profile. I have a whole bunch more. I keep going through all these different ones for different mice at different DPIs, and the reason for that is because I'm always tweaking it. But again, my muscle memory stays the same because I always use the same high-end sensitivity. So I go like this whenever I'm actually playing, and very quickly I'm used to it because this is what I've been playing with for, I don't know, half a year now. And any time that I want to tweak this sensitivity, I can do it, and it doesn't hurt my muscle memory. So, save often, keep it separated if you change mice or change DPI, and if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask me. My Reddit account's just Kovac, send me a message on Twitch TV, whatever, or ask questions in the YouTube video as well, since I'll be sending it there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and hope you enjoy.